Alrighty, so the notes today are similar to the notes from yesterday. If you notice, they're set up in the same way. So you have the figure that you're going to be doing some kind of a construction with, and then over here on the side, you have typed out instructions. These instructions over here are supposed to be helpful. So when you go home and you blank out and you don't know what it is that you're doing, you can reference them, but you also have these videos that you can go back to instead. The videos and the instructions could both be a tool that you use if you're having trouble with any of this. The difference between today's notes and yesterday's notes is that in today's notes, we're going to be doing constructions with angles instead of with segments. So if you notice the picture that you're given right here, angle Q, this isn't a segment that you're given, it's an angle. And so we're going to be doing constructions with the angle. The first construction that we'll do today says that we're going to use our construction tools to create a copy of the angle. So I know right away when it says copy that means I'm going to be using this space down here to make a new angle that's the same size as this one. Remember in the notes yesterday, we copied segments, but then we also bisected segments. And so today we're going to do the copies of the angles first, and then we're going to bisect the angles afterwards. So we'll follow the instructions. You'll need a compass. You'll also need a straight edge. Remember that when you use your compass, a lot of times people find it easier to hold on to just the side that has the point instead of trying to hold it and spin it from the top. If your compass is opening and closing too easily, you want to tighten up the screw that holds this joint together. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was really helpful to have an extra piece of paper or two underneath your notes so that when you put the point of the compass down, you can kind of press it through those pages. It'll help hold it all together. All right, so I'm going to create a copy of the angle. So the first thing says draw in a new vertex, and we're going to label that point R. So I'll come down here and do that. So here's my point, and there's my R. I'm going to draw my angle upwards, so it's kind of facing in the same direction as this one, but you don't have to do that. You could put your point over here, your vertex of your angle, and draw the angle facing downwards, and it would be the same angle that you were constructing because the circle that you use your compass to create, it doesn't matter what direction it's facing. It's going to create a copy of the angle all the same. So the second step says draw in one new ray to act as the initial or starting side of the new angle. So I don't have to measure this. Let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and draw it in. I'm going to try to make it look like it's sort of the same length as this one. Like I'm not going to make it enormous or tiny, but it doesn't matter how big that is because this is just the part that you're going to start from. Now we're going to measure how wide open this angle is, and then we'll come down here and we'll use the same measurement to decide where the second side of this angle is going to go down here on the bottom. So you guys, when you do this, you could get a protractor. A protractor is the one that looks like a half circle that has the measurement markings on it so that you can use it. You could use it to measure how wide open the angle was. I'm just seeing if I have one here with me at my desk. I do. So a protractor could tell you by lining it up that this angle is about 70 degrees. But that's not, the 70 degrees isn't, that's not how they're asking you to create a copy of the angle. So it's cool if you know that it's 70, but we're going to create a copy of this angle without using a protractor. So we're not going to use this as a tool today. We're going to do it all with our compass. So let's see. It says open your compass to any width. Now the word any width, words any width could be a little bit misleading because if you put the point of your compass on Q and if you open it up to any width, you actually don't want it to be longer than the angle is. So any width so that what you're about to do is still going to intersect both sides of the angle. It says put the point of your compass on Q and draw in an arc that intersects both sides of the angle. So what I'm doing is I'm going to make my compass be a little bit smaller so that way what I'm about to draw in will crisscross this angle, this side of the angle, and then it'll also crisscross that side of the angle. And so, again, I do better when I turn the paper, not when I turn my hand, especially because this is my left hand and I'm right-handed. You guys, you can actually, this is a good time for me to say this, you can actually turn your paper upside down too to do any of this. So if you're right-handed and you know that you do better on your right hand, you can always turn your paper like I just did here, put the compass in your good and your dominant hand and do the same thing that I'm doing with your good hand. So feel free to like practice that because it takes a while to get good at this stuff. I'm going to try to do it with my left hand because I'm proud. Okay, so the point of the compass goes on Q. I make sure that the compass is going to crisscross both sides of the angle. I'm going to push down really hard on this side so my compass doesn't wiggle around. And then again, I do better when I turn the paper. There we go. It doesn't matter how big this is as long as it goes through both sides of this angle and as long as you drew this side down here big enough so that when you do the same step right down here, it's going to work. So it's super important that you don't change how wide your compass is open. So make sure that it's exactly the same distance as it was when it started. If you kept this going all the way around, this would be a circle, and from here to here would be the radius on the circle. So what I'm going to do next is, it says keeping the same compass width, pick up the compass and put the point of the compass on the new vertex, and you're going to draw in that same marking that you just drew on the angle up above. Now the only thing about it that's different is that when you draw in the marking down here, you don't have this side of the angle drawn in down here yet. That's what you're going to do next. You just want to make sure that you draw this far enough around so that when you do the next thing, it'll have something to land on. You can always go back if you need to as well. Don't feel like you need to like start over at the very, very beginning. If you ever, like if you change your compass and how wide open it is, you can always go back here, measure, come back here, measure, and then you can always add on a little extra if you didn't go around far enough. But it looks like we did go around far enough. Go back to angle Q. Use your compass to measure the opening of the angle from one intersection point with the arc and side of the angle to the other. I'm going to be measuring from here to see how wide open this angle is. So right now I am going to change how big my compass is. I'm going to put the point of the compass right here, and I'm going to measure how wide open the angle is. So I'm measuring from here to here, and that's where I'm going to put a mark through on my paper. Now, without changing how wide it is, I measure that opening. I'm going to pick up my compass. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to put the point of the compass right here where the arc intersects this side of the angle. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to make the same mark on that arc that I had made up here. So because these two circles were the same size that I drew, this one's open this much, which means that if this one was open this much, the two angles would be the same. So this new intersection point is where I'm going to take my ruler and where I'm going to draw my new angle through, or the new side of my angle through. And so this angle right here is going to be congruent to this angle down here. When we mark congruent angles, there's a couple ways you can do it. Sometimes there will just be a single curve like that. You can also see it where there's a double curve, like this. Sometimes you'll see it where there's a single or a double curve, and then they put a line through it this way and a line through it right here. So it's just good for you to know that those things all mean the same. If I was going to talk about these two angles and their size, I could say that angle Q is congruent to angle R. So the actual shape is the same as the actual shape. And then the other way that I could write it is I could say that the measure of angle Q is equal to the measure of angle R. And so whenever I'm talking about the measurement or how big they are, that's when I switch and I use an equal sign. All right. So that's copying an angle. In example number 2, they ask us to create a copy of an angle that's equal to the measure of angle S plus the measure of angle T. So I'm going to make one new angle down here on the bottom that's equal to this one plus this one. But I'm going to follow the same directions as I did before that are typed out over here for you with the new letters in this problem. So I'm going to create a new endpoint, or a new vertex rather, and I'm going to label that point U. It's a little bit off your screen. Let me fix that. So there's my new endpoint. And then the next thing it says I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an array to act as the initial side. Now, what I just realized is I made that letter U be too close to the edge. I'm going to need to make one part of the angle come this way, but then I'm going to need to make the other part of the angle come there. So I'm going to move the U so that it's more in the middle of the page. So that way I have enough space to do this side of the angle and enough space to do this side of the angle. Those are just kind of the things that you figure out when you've been doing math for a million years. Let's see. So I'm going to draw in one ray to act as the initial or starting side of the angle. So I'll do that facing this way just because it doesn't matter. And so this is going to be where I do all of my measuring from. So this is going to be the starting side of the angle. The next thing it says is I'm going to open your compass to any width that fits on these angles. So the next 3 things that I do, the compass all has to be the same size. So I'm going to open the compass up. I'm going to put the point of the compass on S. I'm going to draw in my arc, but then I'm going to have to do the same arc on this one and the same arc on this one. And that's where people usually mess this up. So when you're doing this, let's see how I do with my left hand. There's the first one. I'm not changing how wide open the compass is. I'm going to come to T. And so there's the mark for that one. And then I need to come down here to U, and I need to put the point of the compass on U, and I need to make the same mark on that one. A lot of times when people are doing this for the first time, the mistake that they make, it's not that they're not following the directions necessarily. It's that when they make these 3 markings, they don't do it so that the angles are the same, size, and that can mess it up. So before we move on, I know it just went off the page a little bit for that last thing I did. Look at the markings that I made on the angles and just see. I made the arc on this one, the arc on this one, and the arc on this one. I made this one go a little bit extra far because I know I'm going to do angle S, wherever that is, and then I'm adding on angle T. I'm not subtracting it, so the new angle is going to be bigger than these ones were. So I just wanted to make it be extra big so that way it would fit and I wouldn't have to go back later and add on to it. So it says I'm going to go to angle S, and I'm going to measure the opening of angle S. So I'm measuring from one black dot to the other black dot on angle S. Now is when I change my compass, by the way. And so there's my opening there. And then I'm going to come down to angle U. I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to make that marking on the arc right there. So if they just wanted me to copy angle S, I would be finished. I would draw the line through there, and I would be done. But they wanted me to do angle S plus angle T. So now I'm going to come to angle T. I'm going to change how wide open my compass is. And I'm going to be measuring from here to here on angle T to get to that width. It's a little bit harder when the angle's smaller, so just practice holding it and turning your hand. It's kind of a precision skill. And then you guys, when you do angle T, you're adding it on to where angle S just finished. So angle S just finished right here. So for angle T, let me draw on the points for you. For angle T, you're adding it on from right here. So I'm going to keep going around the arc, and I'm going to add on angle T. And then this is going to be where the second side of the new angle finishes. So this ray right here is where the angle is done. So angle U is equal to angle S plus angle T. The measure of angle S plus the measure of angle T is equal to the measure of angle U. And so that's one way that you could write that down, making a statement about the information. All right. So in both of these examples, we were either creating a copy of an angle, that means we made a new one, or we were creating a new angle that was the sum of 2 other angles. And so in this case, we also made a new one. In neither of these examples were we cutting anything in half. So on the back of the notes, that's what you're going to practice, is you're going to practice the markings that you need to do and the steps you need to follow to bisect the angle. So remember, bisect means to cut in half. When I bisect an angle, so when I cut an angle in half, all of the markings I make happen on the angle that's already typed for me. So I don't need this space down here to make a copy of the angle. I'm just going to take this angle and I'm going to cut it in half. So let's follow the directions for that one. The first thing says open your compass to any width. You're going to put the point of your compass on point D and draw in that arc that intersects both sides of the angle. So it doesn't matter quite how wide open it is. Try not to have it be super, super, super like the whole way. Make sure that it's going to hit the angle. I usually just shoot for somewhere in the middle. And so you're going to draw in that arc right here where it intersects both sides of the angle. So that's actually the same as making a copy because that's the same first mark that we made on the other page. The next thing is where it gets a little bit different. So I'm going to use circles, so 2 circles that have this as their center and that have this as their center. But I'm not measuring how far apart these 2 are. I'm going to make a new circle that has this as the middle, and I'm going to make a new circle that has this as the middle, and then I'm going to look and see where those 2 circles crisscross. So when you're doing this on your paper, it says put the point, pick up your compass and put the point of the compass, I guess it says that twice. Pick up your compass and put the point of the compass on the intersection of the side of the angle and the arc, so I'm going to put the point right here. By the way, it's okay to change how wide open your compass is right now, but in between the next 2 things that we're going to do, you're not going to change how wide open your compass is. Make a small curved mark on the interior of the angle. So I'm putting the point of my compass here. There's not really a direction to give you about how far open your compass should be. Just make sure it doesn't look like it's less than half of the way here. These 2 circles are going to crisscross somewhere over here when I draw them. So you can kind of ballpark where the middle of the angle would look like. So I'm going to put the point of my compass there, and then it says make a small arc. Different textbooks teach this different ways. So you could technically draw in the whole circle or part, half of the circle all the way around. Most of the time when you're doing an angle bisect, They just draw in a little piece of the circle. So that's enough of the circle from that side. You could make it go further, but you don't have to. Okay? You're not going to change how wide open the compass is. So after you make that mark, you're going to pick up the compass. You're going to put the end point, or you're going to put the point of the compass down over here on the other place where this arc crisscrossed the circle. You're going to come back here and you're going to make the same mark, but from the other side. So again, you could keep this mark going all the way around, but you don't have to. That's enough. That's how you'll usually see it done in most textbooks. So this point right here is the point that's on the ray that bisects the angle. So if you draw in a ray that starts at point D that passes through this intersection point right here, it cuts the angle in half. So one arc here, arc and arc, draw the ray that goes through that point. And so then this half of the angle is equal to this half of the angle. And so that ray bisects the angle. We don't have other letters on this angle, angle that we just bisected, but let's put some letters on it now so that way we could write down a statement about the size of the halves of this angle. So if I called this point A, and if I called this point here in the middle B, and if I called this point down here C, if I have these three letters, now I can talk about this part of the angle and I can talk about this part of the angle. So I can say two things. Let's see. I could say angle ADB is congruent to angle BDC. Let's make that look a little more like a D. So angle ADB is congruent to angle BDC. So ADB, so this half of the angle, is congruent to BDC, so this half of the angle. And then I could also say that the measure of angle ADB is equal to the measure of angle BDC. So this half of the angle is equal to this half of the angle. I could make other statements about this as well, talking about the fact that this is equal to half of the whole thing, and then this half is equal to half of the whole thing, but we're just going to stop at those two. All right, so that's bisecting an angle. Notice when you bisect it, all of the marks that you make are on the picture. The last example on the notes for today says draw your own angle of any size and then bisect the angle. So just like yesterday, you're going to go ahead and you're going to draw your own angle right here on the notes, and then you're going to practice all of the steps to cut it in half. When you're done with this one, turn to somebody in your group who's also finished and have them take a look at it just to make sure that you think and they think that the markings look right. As soon as you're done with this one and somebody in your group has checked it, then you can go on ahead and you can start working on the homework.